The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is Geopolitics with Ghost on Badlands Media. Today is June 2nd, 2026. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, a.k.a. the Ghost of Bass Patrick Henry. Big news today. We covered it extensively, probably longer than we should have, on Badlands Daily this morning, so I'm not going to dedicate the same amount of time to it on this show. I will, of course, spend a few minutes on it. And that is the news about the phone call between President Trump and President Putin. If I can get it to pull up on screen. Yeah, this is a big development. There we go. Okay, so I'm just pulling it from the Times of Israel, but originally reported by Axios by Barak Ravid and Mark Caputo. I'm just going to spend a relatively short amount of time on this and then just encourage everybody to go watch like the first hour and 15 minutes of Badlands Daily. Alpha and I spent a lot of time on this and going through all the different angles of it. Just out of respect for the audience, because I know there's a lot of crossover. There's no reason to be too redundant. But see if I can get a better layout. This one. The headline is Trump said to yell at Netanyahu, "You're effing crazy. You'd be in prison if not for me." Phone call about Lebanon said to see furious U.S. President steamroll Prime Minister and accuse him of ingratitude, saying, "I'm saving your ass. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this." Source in Prime Minister's office downplays the severity of the call. U.S. President Donald Trump reportedly fumed at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during a Monday call, calling the premier effing crazy, fucking crazy, and telling him that everyone hates Israel as he demanded Israel agree to a ceasefire with the Hezbollah terror group. Axios' Barak Ravid cited a U.S. official who summarized Trump's message to Netanyahu as follows: "You're effing crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. I'm saving your ass." I already read that from the subheadline. A second source briefed on the call told the outlet that the U.S. president was pissed at the prime minister over his ostensible plans for major strikes at Hezbollah targets in Beirut, and at one point yelled at Netanyahu, "What the fuck are you doing?" That's the quote. Two of the sources also said Trump accused Netanyahu of ingratitude during the call on the escalation in fighting in Lebanon, a conversation that Axios described as expletive-laden. Netanyahu's office did not respond to the report. An unnamed Netanyahu staffer on Tuesday denied core aspects of the report, however, including the claim that Trump cursed at Netanyahu and attacked him personally during the exchange, while acknowledging that the call was tense. A senior Israeli official briefed on the call later told the Times of Israel that the staff member's account was accurate. Interesting. The U.S. officials told Axios that Trump was aware Hezbollah has been firing repeatedly at Israel and recognizes that Jerusalem has a right to respond. 14 IDF soldiers have been killed by Hezbollah since the April ceasefire, and Hezbollah has stepped up rocket drone attacks, etc. Hezbollah has stepped up the rocket and drone attacks on northern Israel in recent days, but they said Trump believed the Israel Defense Forces had responded disproportionately in recent days, risking Washington's efforts to secure a ceasefire extension with Iran, which is conditioning a deal on a truce in Lebanon. Trump steamrolled, quote unquote, Netanyahu on the call. One of the U.S. officials told Axios, and Bibi said, okay, just make sure everything is taken care of. U.S. officials were also quoted as saying Trump told Netanyahu that he has kept him out of prison, an apparent reference to Trump's repeated public demand that Israeli President Isaac Herzog pardon the prime minister, who is in the midst of a lengthy corruption trial. And in a series of posts on Truth Social, Trump wrote that he had a very productive call with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel, and there will be no troops going to Beirut, and any troops that are on their way have already been turned back. He turned his troops around. Thank you, Bibi, Trump said, describing Israel's attack plans as a major raid of Beirut. Israeli military sources said no troops had been en route to Beirut, contrary to Trump's claim. Quote, likewise, through highly placed representatives, I had a very good call with Hezbollah, and they agreed that all shooting will stop, that Israel will not attack them, and that they will not attack Israel, Trump added, without specifying with whom he had communicated in the terror group, while also claiming Hezbollah consented to stop targeting Israeli troops. All right, so then the second half of this, the reason I wanted to go to the Times of Israel version of this as opposed to Axios, because Axios was really just focused on what the White House had said. That was what they ran with. And so this version of it, now it gets the response from Netanyahu's office. All right, so it says Netanyahu staffer downplays the severity of the call. Hold on, I just want to make sure. I want to get the comments on the screen and verify that everyone in the chat is alive and kicking. Is everyone in the chat all right? Looks like the White House press briefing from earlier wrapped up. Okay, let's keep going. On Tuesday afternoon, a member of Netanyahu's staff admitted to Channel 12 that the premier had a tense call with Netanyahu or with Trump on Monday night over Israel's planned attack. That would have been Monday night, Israeli time. A planned attack on Hezbollah targets in Beirut, but denied core elements of the earlier Axios report, which was also prominently featured on Channel 12. Reporter Ravid works for both outlets, Axios and Channel 12. Channel 12 is a media outlet in Israel. The Tuesday report clarified that two calls took place between the leaders on Monday night, one at 7 p.m. Israel time and one close to midnight. It was the latter, according to Channel 12's Tuesday report, that was the tense call. After the initial phone call, while Trump wrote on Truth Social that the IDF would not attack Beirut and that Israel and Hezbollah would refrain from attacking each other, Netanyahu warned that he would carry out his previous plans to strike Beirut if Hezbollah did not halt its attacks on northern Israel, and that Israel's expanded offensive in southern Lebanon would continue. The second phone call focused on mutual complaints by the two leaders regarding their respective readouts of the first call, according to Channel 12 report, with Trump upset that Netanyahu had implied that aside from postponing strikes in Beirut, the war was continuing at full intensity, and Netanyahu frustrated that Trump's post implied that Israel had ceased fire on all fronts. However, the Israeli source denied that Trump cursed at or personally attacked Netanyahu, claimed to be protecting him from going to prison, or stated that the premier and Israel are hated around the world. Trump did say, and the quote is, Trump did say during the second conversation that it is difficult to present Israel's position to the world and that this fuels hostility toward it. The Israeli source was reported saying, quote, the conversation ended with understandings according to which Israel would refrain from carrying out the postponed strike in Beirut, provided that it is not attacked within its own territory, the source said. Further confusing the issue, Ravid told Channel 12 on Tuesday afternoon that it was during the first call, not the second call, that Trump swore at Netanyahu. The president, Ravid said, quoting U.S. officials, came to that call convinced that Netanyahu was out of control and believing that the prime minister was about to launch an attack on Beirut in which many innocent people would be killed. The conversation became increasingly heated, quote unquote, to the point where Netanyahu twice used the F word. A senior Israeli official briefed on the call told the Times of Israel Tuesday, and I want to read that again. A senior Israeli official briefed on the call. So this is a person who was not in the room with Netanyahu. He was just told. So this is a secondhand source. So he was told by somebody who was in the room what happened. So he's not even relaying firsthand knowledge. Told the Times of Israel Tuesday evening that the Israeli account disputing the more dramatic elements of the report was accurate, but declined to address the apparent discrepancies between the various Channel 12 and Axios accounts. The official summarized the understandings reached between Netanyahu and Trump in a manner largely consistent with Netanyahu's statement after the first call. Quote, we won't strike Beirut, and in exchange, Hezbollah is not going to strike Israel, but our objectives of securing southern Lebanon and pushing back Hezbollah from the border will continue. Netanyahu often touts what he says is a strong and close relationship with Trump in the White House. However, Monday's reported comments were not the first time the U.S. president has expressed displeasure with him. Last September, Trump reportedly told top allies that Netanyahu is fucking me. That's the quote. The White House also sent what Axios described as a stern private message to Netanyahu that same month over the ceasefire with Hamas. In 2021, Trump lashed out at Netanyahu over the Israeli leader's congratulations to Joe Biden after he won the U.S. presidency. Quote, he was very early, like earlier than most. I haven't spoken to him since. Fuck him. That's the quote. And Trump said in an interview with Israeli journalist Barak Ravid, the reporter behind Monday's Axios report. So I played a lot of those clips, a few of them, this morning on Badlands Daily. You can go listen to them there. I've played them many times on this show. Okay, so what we didn't get this morning on Badlands Daily is we didn't get the Israeli response because that hadn't fully formed yet. So now we're going to read this. That's what we're reading through now. And this is interesting. This brings a lot of like new dynamics. Eisenkot, Ben Gavir, Slam PM. So Eisenkot is a political enemy of opponent of Trump. I mean, of Netanyahu. So he's running against Bibi for prime minister. He's kind of, I think he proposed to the other two being Naftali Bennett and Lapid and Bennett are running like on a joint ticket against Netanyahu. They have two different political parties. This Eisenkot guy's in the third political party, and I think he's aligning with those two to form kind of like a 3-man team. Unclear which one would become prime minister if they win, but they're basically just trying to form a coalition against Netanyahu in the election. In the wake of, and then Ben Gavir, of course, is the national security minister of Israel, meaning he is in charge of all the police forces, domestic security, and he is in the security cabinet of Netanyahu. So in the wake of Monday's reports on the call, Gadi Eisenkot, the leader of the Yashar party, seen as a key rival to Netanyahu's Likud in the upcoming election, blasted Netanyahu for capitulating to Trump's demands. Here you go. This is what I've been talking about for weeks, months, going back to last year. Quote, there has never been a prime minister in Israel who capitulated to such a demand, and that is blatantly unreasonable, end quote, wrote the former minister and IDF chief on X, decrying the attacks by Hezbollah on northern Israel. Quote, what Netanyahu, the government, and the cabinet are doing today is harming the national interests of the state of Israel from a place of weakness, and don't try to spin tales about the connection to the U.S.'s negotiations with Iran, he said. Quote, Lebanon is right here. Metula is under fire. Israeli communities are empty. That is unacceptable, Eisenkot said. And the one thing this is This is the man who preached morals to everyone about the basic need to be a prime minister and know how to say no to the president of the United States when there's harm to the interests of the state of Israel. This is great. National Security Minister Itamar Ben Gavir also publicly called on Netanyahu to say no to Trump over the ceasefire. This is an X post. I don't know if I have the X post handy, but they have the whole thing quoted here. Mr. Prime Minister, you said that a strong prime minister tells the president of the United States yes when possible and no when necessary. Ben Gavir wrote on X, this is the time to tell our friend President Trump no. Now is the time to do what is required and necessary to strike Hezbollah, to unleash the hands of our fighters, and to restore security to the north, the far-right minister added. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Axios report came as Trump indicated that Washington had brokered a truce between Israel and Hezbollah after the one reached in April between Israel and Lebanon unraveled in recent days. Despite his announcement, the Iran-backed terror group continued to target northern Israeli communities into early Tuesday morning, and Lebanese media reported fresh IDF strikes. Following Trump's announcement, an Israeli source said Jerusalem had agreed to postpone planned strikes on Beirut hours after Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz said they had instructed the military to strike Hezbollah targets in the Lebanese capital. Trump did not clarify the exact terms of the apparent ceasefire, and there were conflicting indications as to what it entailed from Washington, Jerusalem, Beirut, and Hezbollah, with the latter claiming the truce prevents Israel not only from strikes in the Lebanese capital, but in the entire country. There was no immediate response from Israel to Trump's announcement, but after around 2 hours, Netanyahu said Israel would proceed with its earlier plans to strike Beirut should Hezbollah not halt its attacks on northern Israel. Shortly after Netanyahu's statement, sirens sounded in the Israeli border community of Metula, which the IDF said were triggered by a rocket launched by Hezbollah that struck near Israeli troops operating in southern Lebanon. Sirens were also activated early Tuesday morning in the communities across the north, where the IDF said it intercepted 2 Hezbollah rockets launched toward the area. In the western Galilee, an apparent Hezbollah drone struck a military position close to the border with Lebanon. There were no injuries in any of the attacks. Lebanese media, meanwhile, reported several Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon in the wake of Trump's announcement, though there was no immediate comment from the IDF. I think it just kind of goes on just to list out, statistics. Like when the fighting began on March 2nd, a few days after the war with Iran began. Since then, 26 IDF soldiers have been killed. One defense ministry civilian contractor has been killed. 14 of them since the ceasefire was introduced on April 16th. 2 civilians were also killed by Hezbollah rockets, and an Israeli civilian was mistakenly killed in the north by Israeli artillery shelling. So they've killed their own people by accident. Let's see. It says since March 2nd, Hezbollah has fired some 5,500 rockets at IDF troops operating on the south of the country, as well as around 2,500 at Israel. According to the military, there were at least 75 rocket impact sites in Israel. In addition, Hezbollah has launched around 300 drones, of which 25 struck Israel, according to the IDF. The IDF believes Hezbollah still poses thousands of short-range rockets, along with hundreds of longer-range projectiles. The IDF said that Hezbollah is launching most of its attacks from deeper within southern Lebanon, north of the Litani River, and not from areas close to the border. Okay. Sorry. The whole article was very interesting. And here's where I think like the game theory comes in. Because at this point, I speculated this morning in the Badlands news brief, for those who read it, weighing whether this narrative was real, like did this call actually happen? Or is it fabricated by the Trump team? And the implications of both. Like them making up this story puts Netanyahu in a very awkward position. Frankly, the same as them embellishing the story. If none of the swearing happened and then they went and told Barack Ravid that to make it more scandalous, for the sake of headlines, so more people pay attention, that puts Netanyahu in an awkward situation because now they're accusing Trump of lying. They're accusing the Trump team of lying to the media. If this really did happen, and now we have confirmation that it did, it also puts the Netanyahu team in an awkward situation because they're basically being told what to do. They're being sent to the principal's office at a really critical moment in Israel because they have an election coming up in October. So Trump could have done this at any point over the past year. At any point, President Trump could have picked up the phone and made the call that he made today or yesterday. He chose yesterday, I think, for a strategic reason. There was a lot of talk for the past several days about this major operation that was going to happen in into Beirut, which is the capital of Lebanon. We did see, I'll pull up that article. We did see the other day, I think it was over the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, this Crusader castle was taken north of the Litani River, which represented a change in in the positioning in the war with the IDF's positioning in the war in general. So IDF captures strategic Beaufort Castle, Beaufort Castle in southern and South Lebanon amid push against Hezbollah. I don't think they don't have any good pictures of the castle here, but basically this is a castle that was built by Christian crusaders. And I saw a video, may or may not be real, that of the IDF shelling it and blowing up portions of it. It's obviously a historic site. It's a monument of great significance. I'm going to pull up a map of where it is because I definitely have one of those or saw one of those. Okay, so this is where the map is. This is where the castle is. I had a much better map than this one. Let's just go to Google Earth and look at it. Because basically this was being used as a rallying cry for the IDF about spiking the football. They were spiking the football because they had crossed north into north of the Litani River. Litani River has been like the line that they said they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to go to the river. We're just going to go to the river. Whoops. All right, so here's the map. Let's do the satellite. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. 3D. Okay, so you can kind of see this is a high point. There aren't a lot of high points in this area. We've talked before about this ridge, this mountain over here. The name escapes me, but it's on the border of Syria. It's just north of the Golan Heights. It's just west of Damascus. I kind of thought that was going to be where they were going to go. Let me pull up the 2D. So I had speculated that, and again, I'm not a military strategist. I was just guessing that they were going to go take this mountain that's right here. Where's Damascus? Damascus is right here. And they were going to take this mountain here. That's what I speculated they were going to do. Instead, because that would give them the high ground, Mount Hermon, that's what it's called. Mount Hermon. It's the highest mountain. I believe it's the highest mountain, the highest point on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean. I'm pretty sure that's correct. And there's Damascus right there. It's just west of Damascus. It then gives you kind of a Beirut is not far from it as well. It gives you the high ground. It would help you secure the Golan Heights. I imagine that probably is their goal, is to eventually take Mount Hermon. But what they did is they went west across the Litani River. And where's the river? Why is that not showing up? Because the river, like the Litani River, does this really goofy thing where it does a 90-degree turn. So it comes in comes in from the water, and then it turns north right here, Beaufort Castle. You can see like the relief here. So like that's the Litani River right there. And I don't understand why they're not making it blue. That's really really frustrating. But they've now gone across the Litani River, and they're north of it. And so that represents like they're taking that next first step across the river toward Beirut. My understanding is they were already bombing the shit out of this area anyway. And they had certainly taken places reportedly east of the Litani River, because it turns 90 degrees north. So they had taken towns on the like east of the Litani River, between the river and the Syrian border. But now they've actually gone across the river, which means they're moving towards Beirut. And if they take Beirut, I mean, that means they've captured the capital of Lebanon. Lebanon effectively belongs to them. That's why that's why everyone's making a big deal about Beirut. So taking this castle was a big move, and it was signaling that they were moving on Beirut, and that's what Trump said. And so Trump picked this moment to call Netanyahu and do this narrative deployment, and then leak it to Barak Ravid on the eve of like this major attack that was supposed to happen. I believe it was supposed to happen today. And now Netanyahu has called off the attack. However, he hasn't really, because we got reports from Reuters and others that they actually went ahead with an attack anyway. It just wasn't at Beirut. It was at other areas. Basically, they're still advancing. They're advancing toward Beirut. And it's just kind of like it's semantics, but they are still moving forward is the point. They're still moving forward, even though they said that they're not. And again, Netanyahu's in a really tough spot here, because he has the election coming up in October. He has all the knives are out from all of his political opponents. They all are going to take their shots at him, regardless of whether or not there's election integrity in Israel. How could we possibly know whether whether there is? Do they have free and fair elections? I don't know. But that's secondary to the fact that because of the election season and the way election seasons work, that's when politicians take their shots at one another, right? Because they want to drum up the public mandate, the public support. So all the knives are out for Netanyahu now. And the low-hanging fruit, of course, is the fact that Netanyahu has branded himself as like the defender of Israel and like this huge war hawk. And he's been puffing his chest out lately and saying that he's going to make Israel a world superpower. I would argue in a lot of ways it already is, but he's going to make it like ostensibly a world superpower, independent of the United States. So it's self-reliant. And here he is effectively capitulating to Trump. That's what it looks like. And that's what all of his political opponents are now accusing him of. And it's not the first time they've said this, but now you have this really embarrassing moment for Netanyahu where it's being said that Trump was swearing at him and telling him that he's an idiot and being like, the world hates you and the world hates Israel because of you. So Trump is basically he's basically given all of Netanyahu's enemies in Israel everything they need to just destroy Netanyahu optically, right? With like through campaign ads and whatever, and just campaign rhetoric. And obviously Ben Gavir, who is kind of the clownish boy prince who's just known for firing off his mouth, and he doesn't really have a lot of measure or restraint. He obviously recognizes this because he's coming out and like posting publicly saying, Prime Minister, do not like tell Trump, no, we have to move forward. We have to move forward. So Netanyahu is in a situation where as soon as he's out of office, he's going to be like, they're counting the minutes till he's out of office. And then he's walking into a courtroom and facing this corruption trial. And he's probably going to go to prison. So his self-interest is to remain in office as long as possible. Not to mention, I think he has a Messiah complex. I think he has, he's going to be the guy that makes greater Israel, makes Israel a superpower, etc. So he's got his security cabinet, these psychotic religious zealots that he's turned to at his back. The bayonets are at his back. They're like, we're not stopping. Like we've swum halfway across the river and we're going to finish now. We're not turning back. We've passed the point of no return. The world already hates us. The only thing we can do now is press forward and become a superpower so that can become a deterrent for people coming after us in retribution for what we've done in Gaza and Lebanon and Syria, etc. Meanwhile, in front of him, he's got the knives out from his enemies, but instead of them criticizing Netanyahu for being a warmonger, which is what they were saying before they were like, you're being too aggressive, you're too much of a warmonger, you're ruining our reputation around the world. Now they've actually joined the guys behind him, like they've joined his security cabinet and being like, you're a wuss, like you're a pussy, like what are you going to do about it? Like Daddy Trump is telling you to stop and you're going to stop. Like you're not the defender of Israel. You're just a steward. And the king, Trump, is telling you how to run your kingdom. You're a vassal of Trump. That's what they're going to say. And so now both his political allies and his political enemies are basically saying the same thing. And his only move is to press forward. However, he now has Trump. Ostensibly, Trump has basically been kind of feigning ignorance of all this for a long time. He's been like, oh, we're Israel's greatest ally. Israel's got to defend itself. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Israel's got to defend itself. Like, we're just gonna let Israel go. Now Trump is finally publicly, at least through proxies, through reporting, acknowledging that this is a real problem and that Israel has to stop. So Trump is telling Netanyahu to stop while he's about to get out of the Iran war, which everything's pointing to that. Everything's pointing to Trump leaving the Iran war in the very near future. And now Netanyahu is doubling down, basically, after Trump has said, do not do this. He's doubling down. Let me pull up that article, which is right here. Israel strikes South Lebanon after stepping back from Beirut attack. Israel kept up strikes on southern Lebanon on Tuesday, pressing its campaign against Hezbollah a day after U.S. President Donald Trump asked Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to attack Beirut to avert further escalation in the 3-month war. Following Trump's intervention, Lebanon's government said Israel would refrain from carrying out threatened strikes on the Hezbollah-controlled southern suburbs of Beirut, while the group would halt attacks against Israel. But the announcement has failed to reassure many Lebanese or halt the broader war in South Lebanon, which Netanyahu has vowed to continue. The din of an Israeli drone over Beirut kept residents on edge on Tuesday. Lebanon's government has said it would seek a full ceasefire and a new round of talks with Israeli officials in Washington that began on Tuesday. But the latest in a series of face-to-face meetings Beirut has attended, despite Hezbollah's objections. Iran has demanded a Lebanon ceasefire as part of any wider deal with the U.S. To end the 3-month-old war that began with U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran at the end of February. Israeli airstrikes and artillery fire hit South Lebanon on Tuesday, killing at least 4 people in 2 towns, Lebanese state media said. Israel's military ordered residents of the city of Nabatea, a major Hezbollah stronghold, to leave ahead of the strikes. Israel said troops were establishing positions south of Nabatea, quote, to strengthen operational activity in southern Lebanon. Its forces have captured the historic Beaufort Castle to Nabatea's southeast. So let's go pull that up. And let's see if we can get directions. Can we get, directions? Beaufort Castle. Okay. So it's a 13-minute drive. So again, this Metula is the town that they were all referencing. All of them were talking about Metula, right? Metula is a town in Israel. It's on the Israeli side of the border. It looks like it's about the same distance from Beaufort Castle as Nabatea is, this other place we're talking about, which is the major Hezbollah stronghold. So they're halfway from Metula, which is on Israel's side, now to the Hezbollah stronghold because they have Beaufort Castle. So by taking Beaufort Castle, it's a clear signal that they're going after Hezbollah stronghold. And that's why I think Trump intervened. But, well, let's go back and finish reading the article. Hezbollah said it fired artillery shells at Israeli troops near Beaufort and targeted Israeli military vehicles south of Nabatea on Tuesday. It has not announced cross-border attacks since Monday. Israel partially eased restrictions in some of its northern communities on Tuesday, allowing people to return to work and school as long as they were equipped with shelters, and fully lifted restrictions in others. If Israel's northern communities are attacked, if the Israeli military will strike Beirut's southern suburbs, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz warned on Tuesday. Dozens of and then it says Iran raises the stakes. Dozens of Lebanese fled Beirut's southern suburbs on Monday. Some said they would return now that the tensions had eased, but others were less confident the situation would stay calm. More than 1.2 million people in Lebanon have been uprooted by the war, which began when Hezbollah fired on Israel in support of Tehran on March 2nd. Israel pounded Beirut's southern suburb known as Dahia, early in the war, but has carried out only 2 strikes there since Trump declared a Lebanon ceasefire in April. And then just goes on to list out a few more skirmishes. So the whole conflict with Iran is kind of secondary now. It's the Lebanon conflict that's kind of driving the narrative now. Now, the world's interest is not Lebanon. The world's interest is the Strait of Hormuz, right? Because that's the one that's impacting trade, impacting energy prices, and Iran being, a much bigger power than Lebanon, obviously. Them being at war with Israel is a much bigger deal to the region than Lebanon being at war with Israel, primarily because of the geography where the missiles have to fly overhead of other third-party states. So Trump making peace with Iran, like Iran actually, let me pull this story up. It was funny because we were talking in the Badlands chat over the weekend, and I was just pointing out to the others that how funny it was that Trump said the negotiations are continuing. The Iranians said the negotiations are not continuing. There is all this misinformation, disinformation, conflicting reports, and then Trump's response to it was, I think he was asked about it, and Trump said, "Yeah, we probably are just going to keep our mouth shut." He's like, "It's probably like silence is probably the best. Like we probably should just be silent." And that is right here. Okay, this one.
Just had a call. Also getting some new comments from President Trump right now on Iran. He's at the White House. Just had a call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
The president posting this moments ago, quote, "I had a very productive call with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel, and there will be no troops going to Beirut, and any troops that are on their way have already been turned back. Likewise, through highly placed representatives, I had a very good call with Hezbollah, and they agreed that all shooting will stop, that Israel will not attack them, and they will not attack."
Okay, big news there. Let's get out to.
So the interesting part is the beginning. Fake news reports that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the U.S. have stopped speaking are false and erroneous. So Trump isn't attacking Iran like in this narrative. He's attacking the fake news for reporting that him and Iran are no longer speaking. And so listen to this. Now listen to this from yesterday.
Action in Iran. President Trump is mulling that tentative deal, and SITCOM, meanwhile, says U.S. forces have carried out a 4th round of self-defensive strikes on Iranian targets. This follows the Iranian Revolutionary Guard downing an American drone over the weekend. Overnight, the president posted this: Iran really wants to make a deal, and it would be good. it would be a good one for the USA. Just sit back and relax. It will all work out well in the end. It always does. He's also reported.
That, by the way, is hilarious. Like, that's just sit back and relax. Everyone stop freaking out. Everything's going to be fine. And Bernie Bright and I were talking about that on Sunday night. It's like Trump and Iran are the only two calm people in the room. Everyone else is running around with their hair on fire, and Trump and Iran are like making memes and like laughing about all this. It's very goofy.
Reportedly sent that radical Islamic regime some proposed changes to the latest peace deal. It offers tougher language on Iran's nuclear commitments, and it pledges to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. A former deputy national security advisor is backing the president's approach.
The Iranian regime, the remnants of it, definitely have as part of their strategy playing for time. But the president is exercising a patient approach that I don't think very many of his critics would have assumed he would have in his toolkit. We have maximum pressure from the economic policy side of things, military side of things, and he's tried to move forward with a different kind of diplomatic strategy, making sure that allies in the region are prepared to carry forward what I would consider to be maintenance mode.
Lucas Tomlinson is at the White House. Lucas.
Good morning, Harry. President Trump has said on multiple occasions he has no deadline for an agreement with Iran, and over the weekend he reiterated he's in no rush to make this deal.
The one guarantee that I have to have is that there will be no nuclear weapons. They've agreed to that. And it was very interesting. They originally said, we will not develop a nuclear weapon. I said, well, what happens if you buy a nuclear weapon? So now it says we will not develop or in any way purchase a military weapon. That's a big difference. So we're getting what we want slowly. Very tough negotiators. It takes a long time. I'm in no hurry.
As you mentioned, Harris, over the weekend, Central Command says U.S. forces shot down 2 Iranian ballistic missiles heading to a base in Kuwait housing American troops. This is the second attack on Kuwait in the past week. Iranian forces also shot down an expensive American MQ-1 Predator drone, drawing a counterattack by U.S. forces, hitting multiple targets in Iran in response. A little tit for tat. General Jack Keane says the ceasefire is not holding.
Iran is doing everything they can to disrupt the Straits of Hormuz even further. Why? Because we've been passing shipping through there, to be sure, and that's not a violation of any ceasefire. Iran has taken very aggressive actions, and we are defending ourselves against it quite handily. We have plenty of justification to go back to a war footing right now based on all these violations of the ceasefire that I just described. He's not doing it. But they also know that he could do it.
Yeah, so you heard in that, and of course Keane sitting there like, well, we have all the justification. We should start going in there. And when Trump says, I think we've been talking too much. If you want to know the truth, I think going silent will be very good, and that could be for a long time. And Iran, and that's in response to Iran saying there's too much talk. There's too much talk in the public about this, and so it sounds like Iran is kind of adopting the position that they're going to go silent. They're going to stop publicly commenting on this. They already kind of have. Trump is saying he's probably going to stop publicly commenting on this. They're just going to stop talking about the Iran war. And if the Strait of Hormuz opens up because of some agreement and they stop publicly talking about the Iran war while Israel is fighting Hezbollah, does the Iran war even really matter? If the oil is flowing and trade resumes and there's like this tension between the U.S. and Iran, as Trump says, this is going to take a long time to figure out and finalize, but we are going to finalize it. It's like a little tit for tat. Who's the loser in that equation? Well, the loser there is Netanyahu and Israel, because Netanyahu doesn't get the feather in his hat of like a strategic defeat of Iran. He doesn't, the certainty that Iran has capitulated to President Trump's demands for anything. And meanwhile, there's like this promise that just around the next corner, if we can just get this next situation figured out, if we can just convince Trump that, a violation has occurred, maybe we can resume the war. So that's why you have like Mark Levin and all of them, while they're throwing shade at Trump kind of indirectly, they're also kind of groveling at his feet because they don't want to piss him off. It's a really, really interesting time. It's great game theory. It's a fantastic game theory. And so let me see, how do I say this? when Trump comes out and does this, like does the the FU to Netanyahu that's being reported, this is something that obviously I've long anticipated. I don't know if this is the moment that I was referencing though. Like, I don't know if this is the moment where all of a sudden Trump and Netanyahu are just on bad terms. My guess is that Trump's probably going to like slow roll this. This is going to be like a dead cat bounce a little bit. Trump is going to continue to kind of pump Netanyahu's tires a little bit. But in the public narrative, even normies now understand that there's a rift between Trump, and that should have been evident a long time ago. Like I have the video pinned to my X account from July of 2024 that shows their interaction back in 2017 when Trump first went to Jerusalem and met with Netanyahu, and the way they treated one another, the body language, it was very clear they didn't like one another, and very, very clear they were disrespecting one another. But everyone ignored that, and everyone was like, "Oh, that means nothing." I disagree. I think that meant everything. And so this whole like fake friendship they've been putting on has really just been like a game of cat and mouse. Okay, so I want to go to related to this. Let's sidestep and go to Pakistan. So Pakistan, here it is. Okay, so Pakistan is serving as the mediator in all of this, as is Oman. So I think the relationship is like, we go to Pakistan, they're kind of like our agent in the negotiation, and Oman is Iran's agent in the negotiation, as I understand it. And that's why Trump the other day threatened to blow up. He's like, maybe we'll blow up Oman. And then like hours later, Oman announced that they were significantly increasing trade with Iran. All right, so this is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Qatar. It says, joint statement by the foreign ministers of the Qatar, UAE, Jordan, Turkey, Egypt, Indonesia, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. And those 8 countries represent the 8 countries that Trump met with back in, I think it was September. It was September, maybe late August. That was the UN meeting. Remember when the UN was convening in New York and Trump went up there, and I think he gave a speech, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure he did, the General Assembly. And then he went and met with the 8 Muslim leaders, the prime ministers. And then that's when they laid out the 20-point plan for the Gaza peace deal. That was the timeline. And then they all went to Egypt and to sign it. Netanyahu wasn't invited. He wasn't allowed to come. He said he didn't want to go anyway, but he wasn't allowed to come. Hamas wasn't there. They weren't allowed to come. And that was where the Pakistani prime minister got up and like tearfully thanked President Trump in front of everybody. All right. So Doha, June 2nd, 2026, the foreign ministers of all those countries condemn in the strongest terms the continued incursions by extremist Israeli settlers into Al-Aqsa Mosque, Al-Haram, Al-Sharif under the protection of the Israeli forces, as well as the raising of the Israeli flag within its courtyards. They stress that these provocative and unacceptable actions constitute a flagrant violation of international law, the relevant United Nations resolutions, and the historical and legal status quo at the holy sites in occupied Jerusalem. The foreign ministers further condemned the continued and systematic violations and measures carried out by Israeli occupying power aimed at altering the historical, legal, and demographic character of occupied East Jerusalem and undermining the sanctity and status of its Islamic and Christian holy sites. They reaffirmed their categorical rejection of any attempts to alter the historic and legal status quo in Jerusalem and its Islamic and Christian holy sites, and stressed on its preservation while recognizing the special role of the historical Hashemite custodianship in this regard. So just to translate what that means, not only are they saying that they're going to protect their interest is protecting the Islamic sites, they're also protecting the Christian holy sites, reminding everybody that the Hashemite royal family, which is the Hashemite family or tribe, not tribe, family, is the direct descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. So they're like considered the holy bloodline, right, within Islam, so to speak. and that would be the king of Jordan. That's his ancestor. They are the ones who are responsible for maintaining, as custodians, not only Islamic sites, but the holy Christian sites, the sites like where Jesus was crucified, and other places. And as Tucker Carlson pointed out months ago when he went and visited there, he had this epiphany, and I didn't know this either until he met with that bishop, and the bishop explained it, that it is the Hashemites who are the caretakers and the protectors, and who pay for that whole place to be maintained. And Tucker was remarking on the facilities and how nice they are and how clean it is and how well done it is. And then he was also commenting on how when he goes into Israel, it's like gross. There's like trash everywhere, and it's like not well taken care of. And Israel is demanding that they be given custodianship over these holy sites because Muslims can't be trusted. And meanwhile, this Christian bishop is like, we don't want that, because if Israel takes over those, the custodianship, not only are they going to let it fall into disrepair and like trash is going to be everywhere, but they may just like destroy it or dismantle it or whatever. We like the Muslim custodianship because they actually protect it. So this is just a like very ironic turn of events that a lot of people are going to have a hard time believing and a hard time coping with. And that just has to do with propaganda. That's literally just brainwashing. You're just being brainwashed your entire life to think one thing, and it's very hard to let go of those things you've been told your entire life. So yeah, then they just go on to warn Israel, call for tensions to be de-escalated, and then remind them that the only way they would ever normalize relations is if they have an irreversible two-state solution, path to statehood for Palestine, and the restoration of borders to the 1967 conditions with East Jerusalem as Palestine's capital. Right now, it's Ramallah is their capital. And I think that's simply because Israel just controls too much and is too powerful in Jerusalem. I think East Jerusalem is Palestine, West Jerusalem is Israel. All right. So let's go to saying on Pakistan. So Pakistan was a part of that statement. Here is Pakistan's Rocket Force Commander, Lieutenant General Naman Zakaria on India. He says, quote, "I'll share the first two words of the mission given to my army by the government of Pakistan, quote unquote, deter war. The primary mission of the Pakistan armed military is to deter war. We'll do what we have always done. We did it last February 27th last year for everybody to watch. That was when there was an incursion into Pakistan in the Kashmir, Jamala region, the border of India and Pakistan. And that almost spun out of control because both sides, I think, deployed aircraft, fighter jets. I want to say a fighter jet got shot down, and it was looking like it was going to escalate really quickly. And that's dangerous because they're both nuclear powers. So then Trump stepped in and lowered tensions, made peace. And that's one of the reasons that the prime minister of Pakistan was so happy with Trump and basically called him his hero. And so I'll share with y'all what I've been working on whenever I have time. It's hard to find time to do like little pet projects like this, but let me see. If I can get this to work. All right, hopefully this doesn't crash the computer. All right, so I've been using the AI and I've been like training it to build out this model because I'm trying to like understand the topography and the geography of the area, because to try to figure out, all right, how are they going to establish trade routes? How are they going to establish, how are they going to move energy around? Like, what are the logistics, like the realistic logistical sites? We talked about on Friday, the, this like worldwide railroad that it looks like they're building. I mean, Trump basically said we're going to connect Central Asia which is totally landlocked, with the United States directly. And that's most likely going to happen via Alaska and Russia, right through Kazakhstan being right here above this Amu Darya label. That's a river. So on Friday, we were talking about this area. Let me turn up the topography, exaggerate it so you can see it a little better. The Caucasus, right? And so one of the books that General Quast recommends, and I definitely agree, The Revenge of Geography, explains how important geography is and like the development of politics, of culture, of geopolitics, of trade, of everything. It's like the land shapes the people, right? The area that we were talking about then was Armenia, which can be found right here. See these tall mountains? That's Armenia. Let me pull up Armenia on the on Google. Okay, so you see Lake Savan, giant body of water right there. Armenia, or like the mountains all around that lake, is Armenia. Let's go back to the model. So you can see the mountains all around here, and then this kind of flat part where it kind of flattens out. That's Armenia. All right. And so to the north of Armenia, you have Georgia, which is this area right here, up to the Black Sea. And then on the east, right here, you have Azerbaijan, which is like this whole flat area, some of these mountains, but mostly this flat area. Between Azerbaijan and Georgia, you have this giant valley that runs between the Black Sea in the west and the Caspian Sea in the east. And then north of that valley, of that corridor, which is a natural corridor to move from the Black Sea, which is like where the Russia-Ukraine conflict is happening, to the Caspian Sea, which you can basically think of as like Iran in Central Asia. So there's a natural corridor that happens right there. North of that are the Caucasus. And that's a pretty historic and famous mountain range. That's where the Chechens are from. That's where the Dagestani are from. And this is Russia. So you're looking right now at Russia on your screen. Dagestan would be along the water right here in the mountains, and Chechnya would be right here in the center in these mountains. And so, as Burning Bright will tell you, the toughest MMA fighters in the world come from these two places, Chechnya and Dagestan. And it's because they live high up in the mountains. They run around kind of like the Ethiopians. They have high altitudes. They get larger lung capacity, and they basically just grow up wrestling each other nonstop, beating the crap out of each other. There is no natural roadway between the South Caucasus and north of the Caucasus. There's no way to get a trade caravan through these mountains. Russia has dug out a tunnel. It's somewhere right here that connects Chechnya to Georgia. That is the only way to get through these mountains is that tunnel. So it is highly coveted. It was taken control of during the Georgian war back in 2008. The only way to get around the mountains, I mean, look over here. Look in Georgia. The mountains go right up to the water. So you might have enough space there to build a little town, but you don't have enough space to build like a railroad or pipelines or anything like that. You got to go east. You got to go to Baku. This is Baku right here. So this little peninsula, that's Azerbaijan. So the only way back in the day when they were riding horses, if the caliphate wanted to come from the Middle East up to the Caucasus and go north, this is where they went through. If the cognates, the Mongolians, if they wanted to come south into the Middle East, this is where they went through. This little flat area just east of these mountains. I've exaggerated the topography, so it's not quite this severe. But yeah, that's how you get from Russia to the Middle East. That's really the only practical corridor. And so that's where they've built the railroad that we were talking about the other day. Remember the railroad that Putin and the Chinese and the Iranians and the Indians have all been working on? The Shanghai Cooperation Organization's North-South Transport Corridor goes right there through that natural little shelf And then that critical part that they have to build, that Putin is helping them build, is this little spot. We talked about it on Friday, from Rasht, which is like right here where my cursor is, to Astara, am I saying that right? Astara, which is, you can see on the border right here. I have the borders on, so it's right here is Astara. So the north side of the city or the town is in Azerbaijan. The south side is in Iran, and there hasn't been a railroad between Astara and Rasht, which is like the major city here north on the coast of or near the coast of the Caspian Sea. So Putin financed and is now building the railroad to connect those two cities through these mountains. And that is going to complete the logistics line from Mumbai, India, which is where like most of the freight coming out of Southeast Asia is going through, Asia in general, mainland at least. Mumbai to St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg is all the way up here near the Arctic, up here. So it's a really important trade route, and it's a trade route that is not controlled by the globalists. It's not controlled by the unipolar hegemony, and that is one of the big reasons why they are flipping out about Putin. They're flipping out about Xi. They're flipping out about Iran, because Iran is the key to making that trade route happen. Because it's very clear now that I think we're going to see a huge leap in technology for land-based travel, and then also eventually a huge leap in technology for aerospace travel and space travel, which General Cross has talked about. But it seems like the land, like terrestrial travel, is still going to be an important part of logistics and trade. And so that's why completing that railroad is so important. And let's just, all right, we're about 3:00. So I'll just finish my point with this map so we can turn it off. And I'm hoping I'm not lagging too much. Let me turn off the pipeline names, and I'll turn off the river names. Okay. So what I was looking at when I was making this is I was trying to understand like the different, let me pull up the mind map. So, I mean, ideally, like what I want to do is I'm working on this is I'm trying to get like the mind map plugged into this so that I can like zoom around this model and maybe like click on something, and then the mind map related data pops up, right? And then we can start talking about the mind map in like a 3-dimensional geopolitical, like geographic sense. That would be the dream. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm like training the AI one little step at a time to do this. It's like, all right, make it topographic, give it 3 dimensions. All right, make it more topographic, taller. All right, add pipelines. All right, add labels to the pipelines. Every time it does that, I have to re-download the model and check it and make sure it's doing it right. Add national boundaries. It didn't put the boundary lines for the countries in yet, but now it has them. So the goal, I think, is to get to that point where the mind map can be incorporated into this. But first, I just got to make sure the map itself can be built, the model. But one of the things I was looking at was, like I said, Iran is this big trade corridor between Southeast Asia, Asia in general, and Russia, St. Petersburg, which really means Europe. Pakistan is like the key cog between Iran and India from a land-based perspective. It's also a key cog, a key corridor between China and the Indian Ocean, because China doesn't have any access to the Indian Ocean. Here are the Himalayas. We've talked about the Himalayas a lot, right? India is relatively flat. But you have the Himalayas here in the north, where like Nepal is. This is Nepal. It's like rectangular looking country. And over here, the West Himalayas, this is Western China. And so, like I said before, planes don't fly around this. Planes literally just fly all the way around China, because if you're flying at 30,000 feet, you're going to run into one of these mountains. So that makes trade really tough for China when it comes to the Middle East. That the challenges are, how do you get to the Middle East from China? Well, you can go through India. India is a really, really nice flat corridor, but historically, China and India have not gotten along. They've been bitter rivals for quite a while. So then you look at, all right, we got Russia and we got Kazakhstan. And so now you have a ton of pipelines and railroad running between Moscow and China through Kazakhstan. And the nice part is that right around, east of Kazakhstan, you got Mongolia, right? And you got this really nice just corridor that from the highlands of China, because China is up high. There's this nice little like slope that just leads you right into Kazakhstan, right? And then Mongolia is over here. And that's where, the Mongolian Golden Horde came from. So the Golden Horde just got on their horses and just rode west. And there was literally nothing between them and Europe. They just rode west. There'd be a small mountain range here, a small mountain range there. They would just go around it. And that's how they were able to just sweep through and just take over everything, is because there was nothing stopping them. They were the best horsemen with the best strategies and the best tactics. Nobody could beat them. So Pakistan, getting back to Pakistan, you have gas lines and oil pipelines. Now my understanding is that there is one existing pipeline that is showing up right here. I can't find a coordinating map to tell me exactly what that is. So like I'm trying to make sure that this model is accurate. If I turn it on, it's called the Mahmud Khat Faisalaban Mashiki pipeline. But basically it looks like it's going to New Delhi. New Delhi's down here. But this is the Indus River Valley, right? The dashed lines, so the green lines are existing gas lines, the orange lines are oil pipelines, crude oil pipelines, and then the dashed lines are proposed pipelines that are either in the early stages of conceptual development, or they're currently under construction. The purple dashed line is proposed crude oil pipeline, and the blue is the proposed gas pipeline. And you can see there's a ton of blue dashed lines just crisscrossing all over Pakistan. So Pakistan is basically running a bunch of gas lines across their country, running it to India, running it to China. And that's where I think that's the bargaining chip for Trump. That's how you get Pakistan and India to stop fighting, is if you can get them trading with one another more, and economic entanglement, where you also have others dependent on this logistics line. Like if there's natural gas coming out of Iran going to Pakistan and then into India, and then ultimately maybe China and India, China is going to be leaning on India to make sure they're not fighting Pakistan. Iran's going to be leaning on Pakistan to make sure they're not fighting India. And then Russia, of course, being at the tail end of this whole trade route, they're also going to be interested in making sure that all these people are getting along. That's how you create a vast matrix of incentive structures to make sure everybody behaves, rather than just giving everyone gives their word and we're all going to be good boys, we're all going to be Boy Scouts. Yeah, that might work, in this generation, as long as you have good leaders like Mohammed bin Salman, Putin, Xi in power, but eventually those people are going to die off. That's just the way it is. How do you make sure the next generation doesn't pick up the sword and start fighting? This is how you do it. And so it looks like there's an existing gas line running through the Indus River Valley, which is right here, into China. So you can see, you could almost guess, if you're looking at this, you can almost guess that that's how you would look at that valley. You would run the pipeline right up that valley to get to Kazakhstan, to get to West China, as opposed to building the pipeline to go through the Himalayas. And so I was looking up, all right, educate me, AI, educate me on what are the practical limitations of construction with pipelines as it relates to slope and mountains and terrain. And basically you're limited by the bend of the pipes. So making sure you can only bend the pipe so much before the stress of the liquid or the gas would break the pipe. There's that. You can go up mountains, you can go up slopes, but you have to have a ton of pump stations, which are really expensive and hard to maintain. But the real limiting factor is not necessarily moving the volume, like moving the gas and the water through, the gas and the oil through the pipeline. The real limiting factor is building the actual infrastructure. How the hell do you build a pump station up in the Himalayas? Like, how do you get the equipment up there? How do you get the workers up there? Right. Without them dying, So, and I've looked at like structures on mountains and stuff and just thought to myself, how the hell did they build that house? How the hell did they build that building? Especially when I was down in the Virgin Islands a few weeks ago. It's like, I was just looking at some of these, every island down there is a mountain, and you'd see structures at the very top of the mountain. And you're just like, how did they get people up there? There's no road going up there, it looks like. Or even if there is, how do you get the road built? So those are the challenges that you face when you're trying to plan this and like figure it out. And this is the stuff that I find fascinating. This is the stuff that, this is how you make world peace, but these are the practical challenges that you have to confront once you get past the politics, once you get past all the bullshit and the dick measuring contests and the, pardon the phrase, and the, the egos and all of that. How do you actually build this out and make it work? And geography, topography is going to limit your options. And so you have to confront that head on, and then identify, okay, well then these are the countries that need to be involved to move product from point A to point B. We got to talk to all of them, and we got to get them all on board, and we got to figure out what they need, and we got to figure out their incentives, and we got to figure out how can we get them to buy into this on more so than just a handshake in a agreement. Like, how are we going to get them invested so that they actually have skin in the game more than just a nice headline or a nice, handshake Kodak moment with President Trump. All right. Enough of that. Let's take a break, and then we will come back and do second hour.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, regular $69.98. Now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard MyPillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
What up, Badlanders? Are you ready to rock something new in 2026? Well, as always, we got you covered with the Rise Badlands Native Collection. Built from the rich tones and rugged terrain of the Dakotas, equal parts beautiful and brutal. Old roots, new vibe. Whether you got gators in your backyard or you have to take a bush plane to the post office, Badlanders are worldwide. Different dirt, same tribe. Speaking of different dirt, the ghost of base Patrick Henry designed a plan for the border wall that he actually sent to the White House. It's friggin' hilarious. Now you can get it on a shirt, hoodie, and more. And don't forget, every order throws fuel on the fire of the Made in USA parallel economy. So grab something now at Badlands Media BlackRock.tv/rise.
Your bank kept $1,600 from you in 2025. You probably didn't notice. Now multiply that by millions of Americans. That's over $433 billion in interest the banks kept. Your money goes in. Banks put it to work. They make record profits. You get almost nothing in return. And when they blow up, guess who has to bail them out? So what are you supposed to do? Ask politely? Wait? Accept that this is just how banking works? Or you could put your money where it works for you. On River, your cash earns 3.3%, paid in Bitcoin. Earning Bitcoin gives your money even more room to grow. And it's just as easy as how you bank today. You can get paid, pay your bills, and access your money anytime. Start banking with Bitcoin on River.
Badlandsmedia.tv/river. You will not regret it.
A long, long time ago, a raider went into a dangerous cave. Because he was on an adventure. Or like he smelled like an adventure. But the cave was protected by spiders and lizards. No, it was snakes. Snakes? Why did it have to be snakes? Whatever it was, the raider wasn't scared of it because it was Ghost. The lotion raider. Then he found the golden deodorant. That's not deodorant, that's the towel bar. It was soft disclosure. Ghost had exactly 1 second to switch it. Or the whole cave explodes! And then the boulders started chasing him. Run, Ghost, run! Oh no, he dropped the soft disclosure. I got it. I understand its power now. That lotion is an important artifact and it belongs in every household. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code LotionWaiter for 15% off.
All right. Good afternoon, or welcome back, rather. I'm sorry. This is hour 2 of Geopolitics with GOAT, Badlands Media. Today, June 2nd, 2026. That office grad is great. Green Card crushed that. The kids' voices are what killed me on that. My 3-year-old son, has been talking about snakes a lot lately, but instead of snake, he says nake. Like he drops the S and just says N-A-K-E. He calls it a nake. And my wife and I talk about how he said, he doesn't say Y's, he says W's. So he says he always likes to say how are woo. And my wife's like, it's gonna kill me when he stops talking like that, which is probably gonna happen in a few months. But yeah, so let's jump back into it. Before we do, I need to talk about GART, which I always forget to talk about GART, and shame on me because we are headed back to Deadwood for the 3rd time for GART 12, June 25th through 28th. This town is awesome. I never imagined I would have gone to Deadwood, South Dakota 3 times. I hope to go more than that, but this will also be the 3rd time we go to Mount Rushmore, which I've never imagined I would visit Mount Rushmore 3 different times. But what really makes it special is that not only do we take over the town whenever we go there, it's like an old cowboy town. I'm sure people have heard of the HBO show series about it. a week after we're going to be there is when President Trump is going to host the America 250th birthday party at Mount Rushmore. So we're going to be there like right before that happens. And so all of like the excitement and the anticipation of that will be unfolding around us. So join us if you're in the area. I'm sure there'll be day tickets for sale. This is a really, really large facility. I don't think there's a cap on like how many people we can get in there. There might be, but I mean, for those who have been, they know what I'm talking about. This space, it's like an old, I don't know what it is, an old warehouse or something. It is the biggest indoor space you've ever seen. And so I'm pretty sure we'll have day tickets available. But get your tickets, badlandsmedia.tv/events. If you can't make it in person, definitely sign up for virtual. I know that CanCon is organizing a golf tournament on Thursday. Last time we did that, we did it at Deadwood 1, the first one. And Jordan Sather came and had his drone and was filming the whole thing, and he put together like a funny video. So we'll have stuff like that going on, extracurricular stuff. So yeah, badlandsmedia.tv/events. This is going to be a really exciting one because of the physical geographic connection to the America 250th birthday party. Love the way that this all played out, and really excited to be there. So yeah, get your tickets today. We will see y'all there. Yeah, speaking of geography, topography, it's crazy. Mount Rushmore is crazy. I always pictured in my head that it was like the Grand Canyon, like it was like a bunch of different mountains, and you were just kind of in like a valley looking at, a rock face, a cliff face. No, it's like a flat plain, and then just in the middle of this enormous forest, this giant rock is just coming out of the ground. It's like, so you can see it from far away. I mean, it's wild. It's a wild monument. All right. So with all of that said, oh, you know what? I want to actually address a comment in the chat. Who said that? I want to see. It was Laura Hay. Trade route that bypasses the sea controllers. That's a great point, because empires, like modern empires as we know, the European empires, began with Portugal in the 1500s, the 1400s, the 15th century, the age of exploration. And it was the oceans, it was maritime trade that allowed them to become empires. First it was Portugal, then England, then France, Portugal, Spain, England, France, Britain. That was kind of the order they went in, and they all kind of overlapped, and they all had relevance at certain points in other eras. But that basically is the last 500 years, the last 550 years. And the other thing is that that's the beginning of the modern corporation. So banks started way before that. I mean, you had banks in Venice 1,000 years ago. By the way, the same banks that are now in London were first in Venice, and then they got driven out of Venice and they went to London. They also went to Prussia, and then they went to London. But and I'm losing my voice, I'm sorry. But the joint stock companies. So basically, to finance these voyages where captains would get on a ship and just sail in a direction and hope that they were going to find some land before they run out of food. That required a lot of money. And so they started forming these joint enterprises, these joint stock companies. And that was the first corporation. They called it, so there was the Moscow Company, the Virginia Company. There are companies, the East India Company. Sorry, Mrs. Ghost is calling me. Let me just, yeah, so that's where corporations started. Corporations started with seafaring trade, and the age of exploration. And the most notable of all of them, of course, would be the British East India Trading Company. The Dutch East India Trading Company was also a very important one. And the East India Trading Company, in my opinion, becomes British intelligence. So yeah, the fact that they're building this land-based trade network that does bypass the traditional empires, the thing that became what we would call the globalist system, the unipolar hegemony, was established and built on maritime trade. That's a really, really good point, Laura Hay. Okay, so against the backdrop of all of that, we have this meeting between Putin and Kazakhstan last week, which we mentioned briefly. I think we mentioned it on Friday, but let's just dig into it a little more. So Putin goes and meets with Kazakhstan. This is right when Trump is announcing that he here it is. This is the one I'm looking for. This is right when Trump announces that Armenia thing. So when Trump announces the Armenia deal, like the Trump trade corridor, he also mentions Central Asia, which is Kazakhstan. And so Putin is in Kazakhstan when that happens, basically. And it says what Putin's visit to Kazakhstan has revealed about power and influence in Eurasia. And it's a pretty long article. I won't read through the whole thing, but I did take some notes and have some highlights. And so the highlights are, so Kazakhstan is deepening ties with China, Turkey, the United States, and the EU. The most important relationship for Kazakhstan would be Russia, right? That's the most important partner. It's the geographic territory that connects the Middle East, Central Asia, the Middle East, Afghanistan area, Persia with Russia. It also connects Russia to China. I mean, Russia has its own border, but with China, but Kazakhstan is like the flat plain that where a lot of the logistics and trade route, supply lines, trade lines, roads are going to run. So a key outcome of this meeting was the joint statement on the 7 pillars of friendship and good neighborliness, which focused on formalizing long-term cooperation in politics, security, economics, humanitarian ties, and historical memory. They signed, or they announced, they discussed, whatever, $30 billion of Russian investment. They highlighted, I guess would be the right word, highlighted $30 billion of Russian investment in Kazakhstan that are constructing 70 major projects. Most of them are infrastructure. Like we talked about the railroads, we talked about the pipelines. Russia's currently building a nuclear power plant, the first one in Kazakhstan. Trump is involved in that. He has a $4 billion railroad deal with Kazakhstan. And they had $27.5 billion of trade in 2025 last year. So I think they're expecting a big jump in that this year. More than 80% of the oil that comes out of Kazakhstan goes through the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, which is that pipeline system, not the one that I was just showing you in Pakistan, but the one that goes around the Caspian Sea, which, is Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan. Those are the countries around the Caspian Sea. But that takes you to the Middle East. That takes you to Turkey. That takes you to Europe, Ukraine. So 80% of the oil that comes out of Kazakhstan is going into this pipeline network. The nuclear power plant is being built by Rosatom. That is a company that's the Russian state or state adjacent energy company. They've been involved in like every major sovereign alliance story that we've covered. They've been involved. They're the ones building the nuclear power plants in West Africa, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali. Rosatom's the one building them. You'll recall that there was Russian money that went into Italy in 2000, I think it was 2016, to finance a new political party, which was a populist nationalist movement, which ultimately became the party of Matteo Salvini and Giorgia Meloni. Giorgia Meloni, of course, is the current prime minister of Italy, and her deputy prime minister is Matteo Salvini. And when Salvini ran for the premiership in 2017, 1 year after Trump was elected president, he just literally copy pasted the MAGA branding. He, like, all of the talking points, the bullet points, even the yard signs were the exact same. It just said Salvini instead of Trump. So these are people who are connected to Trump, connected to MAGA. Giorgia Meloni is definitely one of Trump's close allies in Europe, but also connected to Putin and connected to Russia via Rosatom. So Rosatom is very important, and they're the ones building this nuclear power plant in Kazakhstan. And then the article highlights the Eurasian Economic Union, which is just logistics and supply chain shifts and protectionism, tariff management, to make sure that this emerging economy in Central Asia that facilitates trade between Russia, China, and all the countries in between is protected, so that it's not, they don't have outsiders coming in and undermining it. But one of the most notable things that I bold, put an asterisk next to it in bold, was the Russian-Kazakhstan cooperation in space and technology, specifically the Soyuz 5 Sunkar rocket and the Bay Terek, which is a city launch complex. So Russia's basically building like a space facility in Kazakhstan, where they're going to be running space missions from Kazakhstan. Again, this is just, you think of the stuff that General Quast talks about. You think about the sovereign alliance stuff, the fact that Russia is building these things outside of its own borders, going into its neighbors' countries. And that would be like us building a new, Space Force complex in Canada or Mexico, right? It wouldn't make sense for us to do that because of our current relationships with Mexico and Canada. It just speaks to the relationship that Russia and Kazakhstan have, which is a much more ideal relationship than what we have right now with Mexico or Canada. So in a lot of ways, like Burning Bright talks about this, and I talk about it too, in a lot of ways, like, they are way ahead of us in terms of progress, in terms of like geopolitics, in terms of diplomacy. These other members of the Sovereign Alliance, Russia, China, they are way ahead of us in terms of how they communicate openly, like publicly, with their neighbors and with their allies. Whereas we understand that there's like back channels, and there's ostensible, like, proven deals that you can point to, like the railroad deal that Trump did with Kazakhstan last year, to prove that there are back channels, and Trump's obviously talking to these people. It's not just hopium. It's not just, trust the plan. But the way that our State Department openly communicates with a lot of these countries is we are pretty hostile towards them. And the reason we're hostile towards them is because they're so friendly with Russia, or they're so friendly with China. And we see that as a threat, or at least the unipolar hegemony sees it as a threat. So I just wanted to lay out that map first before I explained all that, because now I think you have a better appreciation for how important Kazakhstan is to that map that I was showing you, especially when you get Russia involved. Okay, so speaking of Russia, let's talk about Russia. Right now we have the SPIEF happening, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. This was started a couple years ago. When was this started? Was it 2015? $1997. So you'll remember a few years ago that the SPIEF, they had they invited, I think it was 2024 when, it was 2024, or I'm sorry, 2023, when Russia invited Afghanistan, the Taliban, to SPIEF. You remember that? And I have this hilarious picture. Let me pull this up from the Substack where they, the Taliban, the Taliban goes to St. Petersburg. There's this big economic forum happening. All these people, there's 20,000 like representatives from different countries there right now. So it's a big event. But they invited the Taliban, which had up until that point, the Taliban had been very like isolated, right? They were kind of like they were the dirty kid at school that nobody wanted to play with. So it was a big deal when they got invited. They got invited to the SPIEF, and I think I put it in this news brief, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, here it is. This was the one that just made me laugh, is because they went to like a shopping mall and they were like walking around with shopping bags, and all of them had gone and bought like really, really high polish, like shiny black shoes, and just wore them out of the store. So they're all walking through like this mall or this whatever this conference center is with shopping bags and like really, really nice like dress shoes, highly polished dress shoes with like the full Taliban regalia on. This guy on the right, has like, you could see your reflection in his shoes. I just thought that was hilarious. I mean, if you kind of think of like Russia as being a Western country, it is, as far as Asia is concerned. You go to a Western country from Afghanistan, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to buy really, really nice shoes, and you're going to wear them out of the store. So the Talibros are back. The Talibros are back in Moscow, or I'm sorry, in St. Petersburg for the SPIEF. They were in Moscow last week for trade negotiations. They went to Moscow first, and then I guess they went on their way to St. Petersburg, and they signed some deals with Russia to enhance their trade, to enhance their security, kind of similar to what Russia had done with Iran previously. So again, Russia is just building relationships with all these different countries, and discarding the fact that they've been villainized, up until now in the public zeitgeist. Let's see. So from there, let's go to, the SPIEF's happening right now. We'll see, like I'm sure on Friday, we'll be able to talk about what came out of SPIEF, because there'll be, that's the acronym for it. So we'll see like what people announce on stage, what sort of side meetings are happening, bilateral trade deals that are announced, whatever. I'm sure there will be some stuff that comes out of it. So then we have, this is interesting. I was pulling up the Ukraine stuff, but I just saw on the margin that so Hezbollah flew a drone up to Beaufort Castle, and this is the video. Huh. It's kind of cool. So now let's talk about Ukraine, because we have not talked about Ukraine in a while, I feel like. So Zelensky-linked drone plant hit. A facility of the Firepoint defense company was attacked in Dnepropetrovsk. Man, the Slavic names are killer. But yeah, I assume that's on the Dnepr River. This is a plant owned by Firepoint, a Ukrainian defense company widely linked to a high-level corruption scheme involving Vladimir Zelensky's inner circle, has been struck during a Russian raid, the defense ministry in Moscow has said. In a rare occurrence, the ministry provided a detailed list of Ukrainian defense industry enterprises that had been attacked as part of the latest wave of airstrikes on the country early on Tuesday. A Firepoint facility, which produced parts for long-range attack UAVs and missiles, was hit in Dnepropetrovsk region. It said in a statement, originally established as a film scouting agency linked to associates of Zelensky. I want to repeat that, by the way. originally established as a film scouting agency. So these are, I assume that's an agency that goes out and like scouts sites to like be used in like movies. I would assume that you would use a drone for that. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of like we just saw with Hezbollah flying the drone over the castle. You would put the drone up and fly it around and be like, is this a good place to shoot this, scene? We're going to have a medieval battle here. Does this look realistic? Yeah. Firepoint was later exposed in leaked conversations involving members of the Ukrainian leaders' inner circle as a vehicle for siphoning off lucrative arms contracts. So it went from being a scouting agency for films, for movies, which is where like that's Zelensky's background, to building long-range UAV drones that are sent into Russia to attack Russia. It's just like, you can't make this shit up. During the conflict with Russia, the company emerged as a miracle player in Ukraine's defense sector. Zelensky promoted the firm during foreign visits, reportedly securing contracts worth up to $1 billion. Leaked recordings published by Ukrainian media since April suggested that businessman Tamir Mindinch, he's a bad guy, who is wanted in Ukraine over an alleged $100 million corruption scheme in the energy sector, effectively controlled Firepoint throughout 2025. The tapes also indicated that Mindinch enjoyed preferential treatment from then Defense Minister Rustem Umerov, who now serves as Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council. The Russian Defense Ministry said that 10 enterprises manufacturing weapons inducing UAVs have been attacked in Kiev. 3 recruitment centers have also been hit in the Ukrainian capital, it added. In the city of Zaporizhzhia, the Olmenchko machinery plant and the Motorsic aircraft engine plant were targeted, the statement read. Military industry enterprises were struck in Kharkov, Sumy, Kaminsky, and Poltava regions, the ministry said. The raid also targeted 6 military airfields in a number of places. We'll just leave it at that. According to the ministry, the large-scale missile and drone strike against military-related targets in Ukraine was carried out in response to Kiev's terrorist attacks on civilians, including the one in Russia's Lugansk People's Republic on May 22nd. And if you have been listening to the Book of Trump, we talked about the Lugansk region and its significance during the Maidan coup and thereafter. And Lugansk is now considered a republic inside of Russia, even though it's still being recognized, I think, internationally as part of Ukraine. Russia, it recognizes it as part of Russia. That's part of what the conflict right now is about. Okay, and then we have the corresponding story to that last part. Russia strikes Ukraine in response to terrorist attacks, according to the Ministry of Defense. Russian forces have carried out large-scale attacks on missile and drone facilities. The overnight raid focused on defense industry facilities in the capital, Kiev, parts of Zaporizhzhia. That's where the Europe's largest nuclear reactor is, which is currently under the control of Russia. In Kherson regions, still under Ukraine's control, as well as those other places that are difficult to pronounce. Land and sea-based precision weapons, including hypersonic missiles and drones, were deployed during the attack, the ministry said. This is interesting. EU draws India's ire over joint statement with Pakistan. New Delhi has said it rejects unwarranted references on internal matters. India has slammed the European Union for a joint statement it issued with Pakistan that mentioned Jammu and Kashmir, a deeply sensitive issue for New Delhi. It's the capital of India. The document issued by the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Kaji Kallas, and Pakistani Foreign Minister Mohammed Ishaq Dar on Monday equated Jammu and Kashmir with the Ukraine conflict. It expressed support for the peaceful resolution of conflicts through dialogue and diplomacy in accordance with the principles of the UN Charter. Kallas was in Islamabad for the 8th round of strategic dialogue between the country and the EU. On Tuesday, the Indian Foreign Ministry said New Delhi categorically rejected unwarranted references to its internal affairs. The Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are integral and inalienable parts of India. Those who have no locus standi, I think that means local standing. It's probably, I'm guessing that that's Latin. In such matters, should refrain from making any comments on them. Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Radhir Jaswal said, India has repeatedly emphasized that Jammu and Kashmir is an internal matter and vehemently oppose any third-party involvement or mediation in its dispute with Pakistan. Nuclear-armed India and Pakistan have fought 3 major wars over Kashmir, and India struck Pakistan last year following a terrorist attack in Pahalgam. In January, India raised its concerns to Polish Deputy Prime Minister Radoslaw Sikorski about his visit to Pakistan in October last year. India Foreign Minister Jaishankar said New Delhi expects its partners to not help fuel terrorism in the neighborhood. Sikorski's visit irked New Delhi as it came a few months after the India-Pakistan conflict in May 2025, citing the EU sanctions on India's trade and oil exports from Russia. Jaishankar said that selective targeting of India is unfair and unjustified. India and the EU finalized a trade deal in New Delhi in January with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, describing it as the mother of all deals. Yeah, that's it's interesting. EU is having a tough time right now. They just can't get along with anybody. Everyone kind of is sticking it to the EU because Israel is sticking it to them because a lot of the European countries have cut off ties with Israel. And of course, Israel and India, have signed a lot of bilateral deals and have become partners and allies. And then of course, Russia doesn't get along with the EU, obviously. Okay. So now let's pivot. We'll pivot to Turkey. We'll hit shit, it's 3:47. We'll come back to Turkey. Well, Turkey, I'll just say this. Turkey, I covered this on the Daily this morning. Kanye West, biggest audience ever. Just go watch Badlands Daily and you'll get my take on that. But Kanye West, one of Trump's most important proxies, powerful proxies, I would say, not important, but powerful proxies. And then Ebola is where I wanted to land it. And I think my voice, I probably only have about 12 minutes left in my voice anyway, so this is probably good that we're landing it here. Okay, so we did cover this on Friday, but we had some development since then. Yeah, so this is from Saturday. This article: WHO chief visits Ebola hotbed amid alarming disease spread. Tedros, that douchebag, the one who was largely behind the COVID lockdowns, believes DR Congo is able to contain the outbreak on its own, but independent observers are not so optimistic. The head of the World Health Organization has visited the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is currently battling a severe Ebola outbreak. The outbreak began in DR Congo's northeastern Ituri province around 2 weeks ago. To date, it is believed to have claimed the lives of 223 people, with 906 suspected cases reported, according to estimates by the WHO. Tedros met with senior officials and expressed confidence that the country is fully capable of containing the latest outbreak. The WHO chief warned other nations against border closures and travel bans, which have been implemented by several countries in the region, arguing that such measures only discourage transparency. The quote is, the Democratic Republic of Congo has faced Ebola 16 times before and has ended every outbreak. This is the 17th. Interesting number. That history gives me real confidence, Tedros said during a news conference alongside DR Congo's Health Minister Roger Kamba. The WHO chief urged local residents to exercise caution when burying victims of the outbreak and to seek medical help early if they display symptoms. The optimism expressed by the WHO chief, however, has been met with skepticism from independent observers and humanitarian groups. Doctors Without Borders, oh God, these guys, pointed to the unusual rapid spread of the disease, saying its team on the ground have witnessed, quote, a response that is not yet caught up to the rapid spread of the epidemic. Quote, 2 weeks after the declaration of the Ebola outbreak in Ituri province, the situation is deeply alarming and a legitimate source of anxiety for communities and frontline health workers alike. Never before has an Ebola outbreak recorded so many cases so soon after its declaration. The deputy director of operations, Alan Gonzalez, said, warning that nobody knows its true scale and severity of the outbreaks. Yeah, so here we go. Here comes the fear mongering. And so the other story of that, Kenyans protest Ebola, U.S. Ebola facility plan. People have blocked roads and burned tires to show their displeasure over a proposed quarantine center. Hundreds of Kenyans gathered in the streets of the town of Nanyuki on Monday to protest a proposed U.S. Ebola quarantine facility at Laikipia Air Base. Video shows groups of young protesters marching toward the entrance of the airbase while chanting anti-Ebola slogans. Oh my gosh, anti-Ebola slogans. Demonstrators also blocked roads and set tires on fire, according to the BBC. 2 people were shot dead during the unrest. The demonstrations took place just days after Kenya's high court ordered a halt to the U.S.-supported plan. The facility was intended to accommodate American citizens who may have been exposed to the virus as part of an effort by the Trump administration to keep the disease out of the U.S. Washington's announcement in parallel of a new Ebola aid plan made as the outbreak continues to spread in the DRC prompted a legal challenge from the Katiba Institute. According to the U.S. Department of State, the U.S. wants to allocate $13.5 million to strengthen Kenya's readiness in response to respond to a potential outbreak. But the petition argued that the proposed facility would pose a public health risk, particularly because Kenya has not recorded any Ebola infections. The court's decision halted the plan. So that's interesting. Like, okay, this country hasn't, we have no Ebola cases here yet. We're going to spend $13.5 million building a quarantine center for people who have symptoms. Something tells me that once that facility was built, people would suddenly start getting sick around it, and people who went there would just get sicker. I'm just guessing. But yeah, and so now I recall seeing stories about this for the past week where people were like attacking the facility. People were trying to light it on fire. And so who knows who the good guys and the bad guys are? There could be maybe everyone's a bad guy in this situation. Could it be the Trump administration is earnestly trying to prevent something that maybe the deep state has started, an Ebola outbreak, and these protesters are proxies of the deep state? Could it be that the quarantine center itself is a proxy of the deep state and these protesters are earnest? Or option 3, the quarantine center is a proxy of the deep state and the protesters are proxies of the deep state, and they're basically funding both sides, as they do in many conflicts, to create a Hegelian dialectic. That's possible too. So no need to like settle on one of those. I think it's just, observing the occurrence and just recognizing that it's a pattern and internalizing it as we move forward. But yes, the DRC, which is on the border, has a border with Kenya in the north, near the Ituri province, is obviously a target for the deep state in reclaiming their property, resources, power, wealth, all the above. All right, guys, hit the thumbs up, share the show. Looks like we do have a rant. Eleanor 2000, $40. Thank you so much, Eleanor. She says, well, forget it. I tried 3 times to leave you a boost, Gordon, so you'd get it all, but the site simply won't let me. Thank you again for these great dives and for the topographic map analysis. Well, thank you, Eleanor, for that. And thank you for letting me know. I'm taking a screenshot of this right now, and I'll send it up the pipeline to I'll send up the flagpole to see if anybody can address it. And real quick, let me pull up. If you're listening to this on replay, You can go to badlandsmedia.tv/boost or just click on the boost tab at the top of the screen. And hopefully you can leave a rant, a boost, which is like a rant, but anytime, a super chat. And I think we're all caught up on that. Looks like we are. Yep, we are caught up on that. So thank you, Eleanor, for your generosity. And thank you all for being here. Hit the thumbs up. We will be back Thursday with The Choice with Ash. And then I'll be back Friday doing this show again. So until then, you all have a great week. We'll see you then.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.